Hi, I'm Kelsey Dundon, and this is The Waited. Today, I'm talking with my friend Mahsa Placito. She's the podcaster behind Have You Heard About and the writer behind the pop culture Substack, We Need to Unpack This. We're talking about McMuffins and Mimosas, WhatsApp etiquette, and how to run a book club if you're not Oprah, Reese Witherspoon, or Dua Lipa. Thrilled to have you here, Mahsa. I have, as have you, I'm sure, been a little bit fascinated by all the discourse and discussion about real world community because real life, I hope, is cool again. And you and I both have our own book clubs, and book clubs are so interesting to me because I started mine almost 11 years ago now. And back then, I mean, there was Oprah, there was Reese Witherspoon, but there was not like Dua Lipa. I don't know when you started yours, but all of a sudden it feels like books are everywhere. Books are cool. There's collaborations between authors and fashion brands. There are all these think pieces about how important it is for someone to have an actual real world community as opposed to just a ton of followers on Instagram, for example. There's the loneliness epidemic, you name it. And so I wanted to talk to you in particular because you are one of those people who's such a connector. Like you and I, actually, I'm going to ask you to tell the story of how we first met because we had it's funny. It's a little bit parasocial at first, like how it started. So please, like, do you want to
I will tell. Yes, for sure. So I feel like our lives are constantly converging in a way that I haven't actually told you before, but I was saving this tidbit for the podcast that we're doing today. But I used to read your blog, The Anthology. I want to say it was 2010 around that time. So during my lunch breaks at work, I would log on to like your blog. I'd read The It Girl. I'd read Lainey. And then I started working with a lady named Larissa Dundon, who has the same last name as you. And I was like, Dundon. And I asked her, I was like, do you know Kelsey Dundon? And she was like, that's my sister. And it was so weird because I would read your blog like every lunchtime. And Larissa to this day is one of the most like capable and best people that I've ever had the privilege of collaborating with. And she knows that. I tell her that all the time. And so I ran into you in the street outside of On and Chi on Main Street.
Which was not On and Chi at the time.
Yeah, it was something else. And you had a baby in a stroller. And on your blog, you used to always blur out your children's faces.
Yes.
Which is good for privacy. And I was like, should I approach her? And obviously it was like not a real question because I knew I was going to. And I came up to you and I was like, oh my God, I love your blog. It's so good. Like I read it every single day. And you were like, thanks. And I think I like maybe took you by surprise or you weren't expecting to run into a fangirl on the street. And then we ended up both having our middle kids. We both have 3 daughters. And we had our middle daughters in the same preschool and we were on the board together. And then we developed like our friendship from there. I invited you to join my book club. Mine started in 2018. And I think you joined before COVID, right? Like during COVID?
I joined during COVID. My very first one was actually a Zoom one. And I remember being like, this is going to be so awkward and so weird because how do you make small talk with like 20 tiny squares on your screen? But I was like, I'm just going to do this because I wanted to. I knew that if you and I like jumped out of our like preschool board volunteering friendship capacity into something different, then we might have a friendship future. So I was like, well, this is awkward, but I'm gonna do it.
Totally. And it was weird doing those Zoom book clubs for the most part. I mean, we pushed through, I think we did a couple of them. But what I wanted to tell you about our lives converging is one of the main reasons that I started my book club back in 2018 is I would see on the anthology, you would post about your book club. You
You
would
did.
say, yeah, because you guys would go to restaurants, if I'm
Yeah.
remembering correctly, and you had maybe like 9 or 10 members at the time. Yours has since grown, as has mine. But I was like, no one's inviting me to their book club. Like, no one is inviting me to join, right? Like, book clubs felt, I didn't know you personally at the time, but I was like, this chick has a book club. Like, I'd have like acquaintances who would mention their book clubs to me, like, oh, I have my book
Wow.
club tonight and we're reading such and such. And I was like, oh, is anyone ever going to invite me to join their book club? And I kind of got tired of it. And then one of our mutual friends, who was also on the preschool board with us, Karen, I was going for a walk with her one day and I said, no one's inviting me to join their book club. And I really want to be in a book club. It looks so neat. I'm just going to start my own. And that was what propelled my book club to start. Honestly, if I wasn't reading the anthology and if I wasn't so like, oh, this looks cool. And it's like a group of women that go out like every so often. And I was always so surprised you guys could get these big restaurant reservations. The idea of that stressed me out. So I knew we do run our book clubs a little bit differently. I knew for my own comfort level, I would probably have to start off by hosting it in my house because I also have a problem with continuously inviting more and more people to join. I just like never stop. You also kind of have that problem actually, but our lives are constantly converging. And I don't know if I'd have my book club if it wasn't for the anthology.
That is crazy. I had no idea. That is so interesting. I can't believe that. Wow. That's super, super, super cool. I wonder who else. Maybe there's someone else out there who's also started one because I don't know, it just takes like one little spark of inspiration, I guess, to get that going. But that's crazy. So that was 2018-ish that you said that you did it. I love how you
Yes.
invited me into yours at like 2020 or whenever it was without telling me that little tidbit. That is so funny. But yours was also legendary because, and so I wanted to talk, let's start with what you were saying about how you were intimidated to start because to you, making reservations at a restaurant sounds super intimidating. To me, having 25 people in my living room while my kids are upstairs sleeping sounds intimidating. So I wanted to ask you actually about that in particular because you and I both started 1,000 years ago. And we have different approaches to it. But what I'm curious about is, do you think it takes someone like you to just be so committed to this thing over the years that you guys would have these meetings, if you would call them that, dinners, charcuterie board,
Mhm.
happy hours until like hours and hours and hours, like past midnight, right? Like people would, so that sort of thing is so, so fascinating to me because the way that we've done them has been so different. And so, do you think it takes someone like you, or in my case for mine, because we're both actually in each other's book clubs now, we've got so many people who have sort of cross-pollinated, but we do them very separately and operate them very differently. Do you think it requires one person to really be the person to actually hold the torch over, in my case, a decade, in your case, 8 years? Do you think that's a requirement?
Yes, I do. So community is something I think a lot about. And I do think, especially post COVID, people are missing community.
Mm.
Even we've always been missing it. Like, I think we've just moved away from that as our cities have changed and just like the landscape of what our streets look like have changed and people moving like further out. Like, we live in Vancouver, but a lot of like families have migrated to the suburbs and things. And so I think a lot about the missing piece of community. And I think that most people really want community, and either they don't know how to go about finding it, or they are too nervous to do,
Mm.
or they just don't know how to do it, right? Like, it requires a bit of putting yourself out there and inviting people to things that like where they may not show up or they may not want to. And it's also, it takes effort. But for me, like, everybody wants a village, but few people want to be like the person that is
The mayor.
assembling that village. Yeah, exactly. But I think probably, and you too, like I've always been like this. Like I was always the person who's my friends would come over after school. They'd like get into a fight with their parents and come live with me for a month. I've always been that person. Yeah. And so and I do have like a theory, but you don't fit in this theory, which is that because I moved here from like I grew up in Port Moody, Coquitlam in the Tri-Cities, and then I moved to Vancouver to Yaletown like before I had kids. And then my kids ended up going to school in Vancouver. But I was like a transplant here. I don't have friends here. I didn't go to a high school here. I like my family doesn't live here. So in my case, I feel like I had to make an extra effort, but I do notice that the many of the people that I knew, that not you and not a couple other people that I know, but the people that kind of grew up here, uh, don't need to make as much of an effort because they have like their siblings, their cousins, their in-laws, their family, their friends. And so those are the people that I find like they already have that. So they don't go out there to get it. Whereas a lot of people that I find have stuck around with book club and are like active members are the people that are more like me. Like you're a bit of a transplant and you had to like really dig to find that community because you don't have one anymore. But you're an exception to that.
Yes, I grew up 20 blocks from where I currently live, and my family is here. My husband also is from here. We went to the same high school. We are living a small town life in some ways, which is so strange to me given how big Vancouver is. But I was thinking about this last night. So I have a very, very core group of my high school girlfriends. And I was thinking about how we operate versus how our book clubs operate. So I have a couple groups of girlfriends actually from way back in the day. And we made friends because we were either sitting beside each other in biology class, which would be the case for my high school girlfriends, or from my early 20s when I was working at an ad agency. I have a really close-knit group of girlfriends from there because we were all from different departments. Some of us were creative, some of us were in the more like production side of things. But for whatever reason, probably because we were young, for many of us, it was like our first office job. We would go for coffee together. We would go to Starbucks. We would go to award shows together. We would volunteer for certain things. We would join the softball team. So we became really, really close and really, really core. So for those two groups, for me personally, which happened very organically because we were all going through the same thing over the course of several years, and we all were just constantly exposed to each other. So we have this really, really tight-knit situation, and we all kind of keep it alive equally. So we're all contributing equally to the group chat. We're all hosting, we're all organizing, there's not one person who's really key to those. We all do it together. But like you were talking about for our book clubs, I feel like it definitely requires one person to be super, super committed in order to keep it alive for as long as you or I have. And I think for me, I attribute to your point about how I don't fit the rule of being a transplant. I think it's actually because I've been working on my own since 2011. So I left my agency, went out on my own, worked from home before anyone was doing that in COVID era. So everyone else was in offices, it felt like, and I was at home on my desk. I would obviously have tons of meetings and presentations and everything with clients. But for the most part, I was by myself. So I always say I feel like I'm that, oh my God, what is it? The George Clooney movie where he's like floating out into space on his own. That would have been me if I didn't very actively do something like book club in order to really keep all of these, because what has happened, I know for both of us also, is we've collected so many friends over the years who, like, I've got my cohort of preschool mom friends from when my eldest, who's now 13, was in preschool. I've got my preschool cohort from when my middle one was I've got my new preschool cohort. I've got my elementary school. Like, I've got different clients or people who I've met through friends of friends or like people who I've met through my sister, whatever the case may be. But bringing together all of these, like it feels sort of like you're just collecting people and then giving them a container to actually hang out in, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's so interesting. It makes total sense. I Some people, though, I find are a little bit cagier about their friendships. So maybe this is another key to book club. And what I had said before about wanting to create my own book club because like nobody was inviting me to theirs, right? Which was kind of sad, but it propelled me to do all of this. I found that a lot of other book clubs were extremely exclusive. Like you start off with 9 people, and those are the 9 people that are in it forever or whatever it is. Whereas for me, I would want to invite like you, I have people in my book club from school, from preschool, just like my outside friends that have nothing to do with my school. And it's because I am good and actually better with my friends being friends with each other
Mm-hmm.
versus just being friends with me. I take sort of a comfort in that. And now, like some of the people that I've introduced through book club will hang out without me. And then they like will sometimes message me and be like, oh, I went to drinks with so and so. And I'm like, I don't like, you don't have to tell me. Like, I'm good. Like, I find comfort in my friends being friends. I feel like that puts less pressure on me because does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like,
completely. But have you seen there's a trend? I don't know if it originated in TikTok because I am too old to be on TikTok. So I see these things 2 months later on Instagram. But there's a trend where people are talking about the etiquettes of becoming friends with your friends' friends and how the first time you hang out, you need to actually send a selfie of the two of you to the person who
oh
introduced.
my
There's like this
gosh.
whole thing about how to do that, which is I'm not a sociologist, but I'm very curious in that because I am like you, the more touch points I think you have, the more solid something is going to be and the more something could thrive. So I love that nobody was inviting you to a book club. And
I
so you
know.
decided to start
Now I'm
one.
in 3 book clubs though. Yours, my own, and then one in my daughter's grade,
Look
like
at
my
you
middle
now.
daughters. So I've done it, you
You
know?
have. You made it
Mhm.
happen. You manifested this.
I think so.
So, how did you get over that initial nervousness? And also, for the record, it doesn't have to be a book club. This could be any sort of shared interest club, right? So, you chose book club, I chose book club. But, like, how did you get over that initial awkwardness of being like, nobody else is doing this? I want to have it happen for me. So, I'm just going to make it happen. Because putting yourself out there, you are risking people being like, nah, I'm too busy. Nah, I don't have time to read. I'm never going to show up for your dinners.
Yeah. So I'd say to anyone who's wanting to start a book club or really anything, most people are pretty receptive. Most people want to be invited to stuff, even if they never come. I definitely have people in my book club who are like, they're in there and they wanna be in there, but they show up like 5% of the time, and that's okay. There's definitely even now when I host, I have like a formula, like you'll notice I order from the same charcuterie place every time. Shout out to Charcuterie Vancouver. I love that place. I have like my little same drink station every single time. I have like the same chips. People always like bring stuff, but I try not to overthink it. And there's people that I'm not the only one who hosts. There's like a few of us who take turns hosting in our book club. And some people go like all out and they have themes. And, like we did that dragon book once. I what was it called? No,
Oh,
not ACOTAR. It was like Fire Iron or Iron Aflame or
Iron Wing? Is
Iron
that it?
Wing. Yeah, and someone
I
fully dressed as a dragon, which I thought was cool. But for me and for my book club, I don't overthink that too much. I'm just like, if a theme naturally comes to me, like we did one recently on Yesteryear, and people wore like what was it called? Like trad wife dresses if they wanted to, but there's never pressure to do that stuff, I don't think. And I'm good with not recreating the wheel. I'm good with having a very like basic foundation that people can expect every time they come over. I'm not trying to like do something crazy every single time. I do things in a way that I can manage it. And there is still a little bit of that. Like sometimes, like I think the last one that you came to, my one of my kids came home from soccer The other two were still awake, eating like salami off the charcuterie. And like, it doesn't have to be. And then like one didn't want to go to bed and started crying, but it is what it is. Like, I want to host and I have kids. And for the most part, they're upstairs and I have to like bribe them with TV and like, leftover snacks the next day. But I think I told you when you asked me to do this, I said, if you build it, they may sometimes come. That is my tagline. Like, my expectations are also low where, some people are going to come every time and some people are never going to come, but they want to be in the group and that's like okay with me. But I also, because I have a marketing background too, I think we were similar to you. I think we were also taught to give people the path of least resistance. So to make it as easy for people to want to come or to want to engage as possible. So if you don't read the book, that's fine. If you want to just come shoot the shit, that's fine. If you want to come have a drink, that's fine. You're making it as easy for people as possible. I used to and I think you do this, like we put up polls on dates and books, but sometimes if I know I'm hosting, I think the person hosting, it's their time that is the most important because you have to be available. So sometimes I'll just be like, hey guys, I'm free on like X date. I read this book recently. Like it was the yesteryear book that I was so stoked to talk about. Whoever wants to come, let me know. And we never get 100% participation. That would be insane. We get maybe half. Like I think my book club has 25 people in it now, and I have maybe 10 people showing up each time, maybe 12.
I feel like it's more than that. You think only that?
Yeah.
To your point about low lift hosting, I need to tell you, there are two ways that you have influenced me throughout my life. One is you influenced me to have a third kid because you were like, my third kid is so easy. Sometimes I have to check the back seat of my minivan to make sure that I actually loaded her in there. And I was like, well, this sounds like a great idea. So that's one way. The second way is we at our preschool had some sort of potluck brunch and everyone was showing up with crepes and with like platters of fruit that they had spent 2 hours chopping. And then you show up with a platter of McMuffins.
Yeah.
And it unlocked something for me. And did you know that I have more than once hosted something and I have given you credit every time, but I'm realizing now I have not actually invited you. So I will do that next time. I have hosted an event that I have called McMuffins and Mimosas, where everyone just brings the dirtiest breakfast food they can find. So like the weirdest Pop-Tart flavors, the strangest cereals, and we roll up and have mimosas. And it is so fun and people love it. And it is like the lowest of low lift because I'm not even doing anything except for door dashing McMuffins.
Okay. Yes. The McMuffins, I remember I walked in with them and it was just because it was easy. And I'm like, who doesn't like a McMuffin? And the parents were so like overjoyed. It was like they had been walking through the driest desert for hours and someone offered them like a sip of water. Like I've never seen McMuffins go so fast. And I was like the hero of that potluck. And I am definitely not a type A person. I'm very type B. So like my theory in life is it's good enough. Like even when I was working just forever, it's been like, it's good enough. I was never trying to get 100% on a test. I was only trying to get like whatever mark I needed to get into university. Like, you know what I mean? I was not trying to be the best ever. And the bar for myself is not super high. And the bar for others also isn't super high either. Like my expectations are low. So that's why the rules of my book club are kind of like non existent. Whereas some other book clubs, and I'm sure you've experienced this, some book clubs are extremely strict. Have you heard about this?
No.
Okay, so we have a mutual friend. I'm not going to say her name, but
oh my God,
she's
who
in a
is
book
it?
club.
Okay.
I'll tell you later.
Okay.
She's the other person that hosts very consistently in our book club. She's a beautiful home.
Got it. Got it.
She's a beautiful blonde.
Okay. Got it.
So she's in a book club at our school in one of her grades. It's extremely regimented. So it's like they mostly just read more serious books like on like parenting or I don't know, like very science-y type books. And also this is another interesting thing. Husbands are invited. Whereas with our book clubs, it's just the ladies, right? Like we don't bring our significant others. And it's very serious. You're going there to talk about the book. And there is no alcohol. I believe that they just have tea and things. And that book club works for those people in that group. It's just not something that would resonate with me personally. But the fact that they have that and it's like a group of people who are super into that is great. And that's the way that they run it, very different than how we run ours. But there's like something for everyone, right? Like you run yours like how you want to. If they invited me to that, I feel like I would be intimidated to come because half the time, even when I'm hosting, I don't finish the book. You know?
Me too.
Half the time, I don't
Yeah.
even know sometimes what the book is.
You know what? You don't even know what the book is. That's hilarious. I feel like that's very funny. I feel like for my book club, I'm the only one who ever knows what the book is. I just don't necessarily read it. But also, I hosted a book club at school. I'm remembering now. I totally forgot about this last year for Jonathan Haidt's Anxious Generation. And I had only read the first half of the book, but I was able to still facilitate. We had so many really, really super keen parents, some of whom had read the entire thing, some of whom hadn't. But because it was such an interesting topic, everyone's super charged up about it. The fact that I, as the facilitator of the discussion, had not read the entire thing did not matter at all.
Yeah.
I think that's such a key point, the fact that you can do super low lift. I'll tell you what the rules are for my book club, Fight Club rules. Okay. So one is you at the event do not have to have read or finished the book whatsoever, but everyone else there is allowed to talk about the entire thing. Full spoilers, A-okay. So that is just one of the things on the table. Anyone can talk about any point of the book. It doesn't matter. One thing that I have stopped doing, but I need to restart, is before we used to wrap up our former book club meetings, this was like a year or so ago, I probably dropped this habit, but I really should pick it up again. We actually sat down and everyone who was at that current book club dinner picked a date in the future. We picked a date and we picked a book. So then it just like kept the chain going really, really beautifully. And then from that, we invited everyone else. And there are about 40 people in our book club now. So there's quite a few. And it just like yours, there are people who are driving in from all parts of the suburbs to come. We usually meet centrally, but not that central. It's usually like closer to what's convenient for me, to be honest. And then we have people who don't show up and yet they read all the book. We have people who live in LA and they're super active on the chain, but don't necessarily ever actually come in person, even when they're in Vancouver, because we just haven't been that organized to coordinate it. But those, I think, would be the two biggest rules that we operate by. But you think you have no rules whatsoever?
I agree with you that people can talk about the full book, even if other people haven't read it. There has been times where people have sort of like gone into another room if they're near the end and they don't want to be spoiled. I don't have rules, but I do have a pet peeve that if you never come to book club, which is totally fine, and you want to be in book club and you're on the WhatsApp chat and you never pipe in with like a book recommendation or some other random thing, that does kind of bother me because it feels like a little bit too much of a sleeper agent. Like, and I have rebooted my WhatsApp 3 different times because when you leave, and we should talk also about the dynamic of a WhatsApp group, because I think those are really interesting. When somebody leaves a group, it is visible to everyone, right?
Is it? I think it's just visible to the admin.
I mean, I see it in every group that I'm in, even if I'm not the admin. It'll say like Kelsey left the group or whatever it is.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or maybe it is just the admin, but I'm the
You-
admin of so many groups.
Yes, it could be that you
So-
are one of the admins for those other groups because I looked that up recently or maybe it's a certain setting that I have, I'm not sure, but I hear you. It's such a downer move. So please, the etiquette of WhatsApp and leaving.
Okay, I have had 3 different groups. My book club is called Lit Ladies. The original was called Lit Ladies. The next one was, and that was pre-COVID.
Mm.
Then we had our Zoom meetings during COVID, and some people, some of the original members of book club lived a little further. Like I'm in Vancouver. Some people are coming from Port Moody or Burnaby or what have you, Richmond. And it was just difficult for them to get out having young kids and whatnot. And also because of COVID, many dynamics and relationships changed. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to give book club a fresh start. And it's always kind of like, and I've done this 2 times. It's always like, "Hey, I'm gonna restart this group for whoever wants to be in it. Give this message a thumbs up if you wanna be in it." So the next iteration, I think, was called, like, Lit Ladies: The Remix, and then that went on for, like, a few years, like, 4 years, 5 years, and then this year, I kind of did it again because there's people that just, like, never come and they never pipe in, and I wanna make sure that everyone that is in that WhatsApp chat actually wants to be there. And so, yeah, there are people that are still in there that are like, maybe one day they'll come, but it hasn't happened yet. But I think they still want to belong to it, obviously, because they're, they've come across now several times. And I also have a lot of grace, I think, for people's life situations. And you never know. Like, I think just because I am comfortable with chiming in on a WhatsApp group with 20 people in it doesn't mean that everyone is comfortable. And I remember having a conversation early on with a good friend of mine who lives in the suburbs. She was part of the original book club, version 1, not version 3. And I said, I was like, oh, like, do you want to join, like the second? Because she never gave me the thumbs up on the chat that she wanted to join. And she just told me, she said, it feels really daunting being in person. I feel nervous to talk
Mm.
because in like an actual group setting,
Oh,
because
wow.
she's like, what if, because we're talking about a book, and we don't like dwell on the book. Where like the most we've ever talked about a book is maybe half an hour out of many, many hours of these book clubs. Sometimes my book clubs go on until 2, 3 in the morning, right? And so she just said, I just feel nervous to talk because I don't know if I say something and then people are like, oh, like that was a weird take. And it was a good
Mm.
reminder to me that many people and are just not super comfortable putting themselves out there. So I do have a lot of grace, I think, and leeway because you just don't know what's going on for someone, or even the people that want to belong to the group and yet they never come. Maybe they're overwhelmed with like young kids at home, or like their partner travels a lot. Like who knows what's going on? I do find that besides the actual physical book club of all of us gathering, I do find the digital, like the WhatsApp groups, to be really valuable because
Mm.
it kind of feels like in both yours and mine, like we have this network of women that we can ponder like a question or ask for a recommendation, or just be like, hey, there's like this, especially in yours, like there's this like author coming to town and they're giving a, who wants to go. And so sometimes we do these book club field trips. And I find that to be just as valuable as the actual gathering, right? Like, because we are now belonging to, and like, I've had chats with some of your friends who I don't know really well, who've like reached out to me just to get like school advice or like
Oh,
various things. Yeah. And so that's been like, I don't know. I just think that's really interesting. And for me, I'm always like the more the merrier. That's sort of just my vibe. And I know not everyone's like that, and that's okay. But I do love being part of these groups that I feel like I learn so much from, where they are sharing things that I otherwise wouldn't come across. And hopefully people get the same thing out of like my book club chats as well.
I do for sure. And I have never actually restarted our book club chat. So anyone who's wanted to stay in it has just either stayed in it, or some people have left for sure, because sometimes we do blow up the feed and it gets to be quite
Yes.
overwhelming. But what was interesting was there is this one friend of a friend who joined many years ago. And she's been silent. She's been so silent for years. She's had 2 like very young kids, been back at work doing the whole like mat leave and whatnot. And I saw her at a party recently and she was like, just so you know, I am up to date on the entire chat. I have been reading everything. I just have been, she's been a sleeper agent, but she has been very, very engaged. So then I was like, okay, so there's clearly people who are, it's almost maybe like a social media feed for them, maybe where we're sharing, because you especially are sort of a pop culture aficionado. I mean, you've got obviously your podcast, your Substack. We should unpack this. And we need to unpack this. Sorry.
I don't even
Um,
know because I haven't. I'm so bad. I like stopped doing all of that because I also am just like it takes, as you know, because you also have a Substack and a podcast. It takes a huge amount of energy and time, and I'm always like weirdly renovating something. Do you know what I mean?
oh,
And
we
I
are
in the
getting
most
our house painted right now.
Yeah, like in the most we probably are similar in that we renovate in the most painful way possible. It's like I'm gonna do one room. And then 2 years later, I'm gonna do this room. It's weird, but it's whatever. It keeps me occupied. Yeah, it takes a lot of I love pop culture. Uh, and I think that was also my community growing up. Like I think really like, yes, this podcast that we're doing is about book clubs, but you can find community anywhere. And one of my early places that I found community, I must have been, it was like really early internet days. I was probably 14, 15. I would watch a show like Big Brother or like Seventh Heaven or, like old school stuff. And I would go on this website called Television Without Pity. Back in the day, it doesn't exist anymore. And I would go on the message forums and I would read what people are saying. And if you know the Fug Girls, like that
Yeah.
do the Go Fug Yourself blog, they
Mhm.
were one of the early like mods of that website. And so like and there are people that I had on my podcast like 20 years later. It's funny how life comes full circle, but a lot of my community that I found
Wait,
was like online. Yeah.
that's so crazy. That is very, very, very interesting because one of the things that I wonder about now, I've got a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 5-year-old, is what their relationship to online in general and then communities in particular should be. And I have never thought about that as being a pro. So that's fascinating.
Yeah. But I mean,
Have
that was before social media and before I mean, I guess I could have gotten into bad stuff as well. Like it was my parents didn't know anything about the internet, so they weren't like supervising me too much. But it was like I loved it. I would go and I would read the message boards. And I to this day do that. So it was like it used to be Television Without Pity, and now it's Reddit. So like
right.
Euphoria finale is done. The first thing I'm doing is going on Reddit on the Euphoria thread. I'm a lurker. I'm not a participant, but I like to read everybody's theories and like, I just that is my hobby and it's been my hobby forever. It's just what I naturally gravitate towards. But I think finding community wherever you can, like some people have it through their church. I'm not a religious person. Some people have it through like their school or through their neighborhood. I live on a street with no kids. I'm not going to find that here. But I would really say to anyone listening, I think more people are lacking community than not. Like, I think there's a lot of people out there who are lonely, whether or not they realize it, or people who are like, it is just the grind of life. Like, especially having kids our age, a lot of it is like taking them to school, taking them to sports, blah, blah, blah. Right.
Although I don't know if you have friends who are past that phase, but a friend of a friend is. So his kids are now, he's an empty nester or an open door or whatever that time of life people want to be called. And he said he looked like, certainly like put his head up and was like, hold on. I don't have a community because he's got a super, super intense job. He was very busy with his kids' sports, but he didn't build that separately in a way that, and I wonder if there's maybe also differences between how men and women might do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, I think it's really, really, I think it's nourished me so much. I wonder what my life would even be like without having these groups who I'm meeting with regularly. And you know what's so interesting when we were talking about different, it doesn't have to be a book. It could be just a shared interest of some sort. We had at one point, me and my high school girlfriends, and it's so funny because this has entirely fizzled out, but it was specifically a non-book club. So we called it topic night just because I don't even
Ooh.
know where that came from. But we would just pick a random topic and what are some examples? This was so long ago, but we would be like, okay, we want to talk about social media, let's say, whatever the case may be. And that was it. And you just showed up to dinner and be like, this is what we're going to talk about. And we would a little bit, but it's sort of a reason. It almost gets people out. It gives them a purpose. It, in some ways, to the like social anxiety, community awkwardness of getting started, it almost helps people get over that because all of a sudden they know what they need to bring to the table. I'm obsessed with Priya Parker. As you know, I bring her up every time I have a chance to. She wrote The Art of Gathering, and I read that pre-COVID, and I should read it again now, but I've been implementing so many of her different pieces of advice and rules and tactics and techniques. And one of the things that she recommends is that you give everyone a job, something to do, some way that they can contribute, because then all of a sudden they feel needed, they feel welcome, they feel integrated. And it could be, I think that having some sort of shared topic, interest, whatever the case may be, that someone knows that they're then going to and can use almost as a crutch is interesting. There is also a friend of mine, Caitlin, who's an actor. And I forget what she called it, but she has all these actor friends. And so they're very creative people. And each time they would get together, and I went to one, someone would teach one of their special skills. So the one that I went to was an actor who was teaching us how to do a British accent. And so for the first time ever, I learned that the way that people in England speak that sits entirely differently from how we in North America carry our voice in our throat, the way that it's just an entirely different way of speaking, even though it's very much the same language. So things like that. Now she's moved, she's doing different things. That sort of group it's tough to keep going because it requires so many people, I think, to be contributing constantly. It's not something like that is not something like a book club that you and I run where you or I could just arbitrarily be like, okay, this week or this month or this quarter, we're going to be reading O Sinners or whatever the case may be. And then just have it you be the one who organizes it. Like it requires so much more contribution from everyone in a very involved way. Have you ever been like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is too much. I'm too frustrated with people bailing at the last minute or trying to find a date that works for everyone. Like, have you ever thought of giving up?
No, that would never even cross my mind. I think
Oh,
that I almost feel, and this is just a me thing, but I feel almost responsible for being the gatherer of people in certain ways. Like
in book club specifically or
not
in your
no,
life generally?
in general. So like and not in a way that puts pressure on me, just in a way that like I like to do that. It is kind of like a skill that I'm good at and I just always have been. It's like everybody has their superpower or whatever it is. Mine has always just been like gathering people together and knowing you can't gather every random person together. Knowing which people to bring together that would like get along or form their own friendships. And so like I don't just have a book club. Like do you remember Fit Ladies?
Yes.
Okay. So we have Lit Ladies, the book club, and then we had Fit Ladies, a fitness group that was like during COVID where we'd meet like, I don't know, like 8 a.m. on a Saturday
I loved that and I miss it.
outside. Yeah. And like social distancing. And it was so great. I have like a walking club that's very casual. Um, like you can find just calling it a club is fun, but it's really just like a group of people who want to do a thing and you come together and you do that thing. I feel for whatever reason responsible. Like if I see there's a comedian like Nikki Glazer is coming to town, I like will randomly buy 6 tickets, and then closer to her show, I'll be like, who wants to go see this? Because I know that I'll be able to like offload their tickets. And part of that too, I think, is good for my kids to see that, because I always try to tell them I'm in my 40s, they're young. It takes a long time to learn to be yourself and comfortable around people and not be super concerned with people's ideas of you. And so obviously they're still learning that, but I always tell them, like, if they feel left out, which they do, right? Like they're kids, if they feel left out in certain areas, I do try to tell them that, and this is sad, but I do think it's like a universal truth, is like it's up to you to include yourself. Like we can't always wait for people to be like, come along, like, hey, come, you have to be in some level able to include yourself. And I know that that's hard. And I would say to people who are a little bit more like reserved, or maybe you're shy or you're nervous about that stuff, when you are given the invite, if you're like on the fence, maybe just say yes more, because you don't know like what doors that opens up. And just be like open to things. And I think it's like a muscle that you like any muscle, the more you do it, the more comfortable you are doing it. And I do think, especially in older age, it becomes very isolating and very difficult when you lack community. And even if your community is like a small circle of friends that you travel with or whatever, I don't know, that you go camping with, it doesn't have to look like a book club. It is so, I think, imperative to have some sort of community. Oh, your kids are at sports all the time, like mine are. Become friends with those parents, even if you don't want to. Like, you have a lot of friends. Do you ever feel like, oh my God, that is too many friends, I don't want to make any more? Or do you ever feel burnt out over the amount of people that you have to juggle in your life?
Yes, because well, I shouldn't say that. That sounds horrible. I love all the people in my life, and I work so hard to keep them in my life because my natural inclination, I am a weird introvert, extrovert. I think I present very extrovertedly, but I love nothing more than to have a Saturday where my husband has taken my children out to like the pool and wherever else, and I can just like be by myself. I definitely feel, but I recognize that ultimately, long term, big picture, it's so, so critical. And it actually does help me get through life right now with everything that I'm juggling. And so it's so, 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 so important to me, the people part of it. I have very actively forced and intentionally forced myself over. The weird thing is also is I feel very socially awkward myself, which I think is part of my gift when I am hosting, because I'm so concerned with making sure that people don't feel that when I'm having them over. And I hope, my goodness, that people who have come to my parties and to my brunches and lunches and dinners and whatever barbecues, that they feel included and welcomed and brought together, because that's my biggest, like, that's what pains me the most when I'm somewhere else, is when I don't feel that, just because it's something that I struggle with on my own. So yes, I have very intentionally forced myself to, and maybe it's because of all the like think pieces I read about just how it's like, I don't know, there's so many studies where it's the quality of your friendships dictate basically, or the quality of your relationships dictate the quality of your life. And I have really built that, and I'm trying to build that for my kids too.
Me too.
I am not So my goal is to be the house where they all want to hang out. Like, I'm going to get a trampoline specifically to just like, I want to have all the kids here all the time, even though it means that I'm feeding them and cleaning up after them and doing their dishes and reminding them to like drink water and whatever it is. Like, just like I'm all of a sudden hosting a ton of kids constantly. And it's not because I'm super chill and fun. It's because I'm the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And I just like really, I want to be their safe place. I want to know my kids' friends. I want to know their families. That's an interesting thing. Is we're in a public school system. I know, we're in the private school system. So for you guys, it's so different because those of you in the elementary school, private elementary school, just transition into the private high school. So it's the same cohort, give or take. I know you would add kids and all of that throughout. But for us in the public school system, the high school that you go to is very different cohort than the elementary school that you're at. So we're on the cusp of that. And so I'm looking ahead to September. And I'm already trying to be like, okay, I need to have all of this set up. I need to be hosting for these kids. I want to meet these families. I want to get to know them. I now look at it so differently. So I'm also in an interesting situation where my oldest is going and starting high school. My youngest is starting kindergarten. And when my oldest was starting kindergarten, I did not value the families, like the friendships, the communities. I did not prioritize that then the way that I do now. So, for example, ever since my eldest was going into kindergarten, I wanted to do something like what you guys do at your school, where you have a like playground popsicle party before the school year starts to get all of the families together and get to know and start building those relationships. I always thought that was brilliant. I didn't do it for my first kid. I didn't do it for my second kid. Finally, for my third kid, I'm on the parent group at the school. So I was doing it for preschool. I'm doing it for elementary school. And so I was like, we really just need to institute this. And so I, with the help of some other parent volunteers, threw a big pizza party in the park for all of the incoming families. Finally, 8 years after having wanted to do that in the first place. And so I'm really prioritizing these family relationships throughout this like 8-year span between my oldest and my youngest. And what else was I going to say? Oh, part of, I think, what unlocked, going back to lazy hosting, low lift hosting, doing less to do more is how I look at it. Because when I was looking at last month, I realized that I actually have hosted 2 different events for our school. One of them was a really complicated conversation around youth and substance use. And I'm actually going to have a podcast episode about that because it was so fascinating. So that was very different end of the spectrum from the like welcome to kindergarten pizza and popsicles at the park event. But what enabled me to do both of those was I just did them at the bare minimum. So I piggybacked for the kindergarten event. I piggybacked off of something that was already happening at school. So the date was already there. The parents were already gathered. And I was just like, hey, let's go to a park. Let's do this. I will be the one to deal with Domino's and order the pizza. So we brought freezies, we brought bubbly. Like it was just it was so chill. It was so easy. And it was really wonderful to get to meet all of these families. So I think when you're doing things in a way that is really manageable, and I think there's also something to be said. So like the fact that you were talking about with your charcuteries, you have your system already in place. So now it's just like rinse and repeat. Hopefully that'll be the case for the like welcome to kindergarten event. Someone else will take it on and we'll just rinse and repeat until the end of time. So I think there is something to be said for that when you've done the heavy lifting at a certain point, and then you can just recreate it from there on out for better or worse. Can we talk also about, we're almost at an hour. Mahsa, my goodness.
I know.
I just wanted to mention quickly the retreats, because I know you guys have done so many retreats. We used to do them pre-COVID. We haven't done one since. But like, do you think it's important? Like, how important is also the like getting together in person, off-site, doing like a reader's retreat? Do you think that kind of thing, or that's a nice to have, that's not even a need to have?
Okay, so I think that's definitely a nice to have. We've done that twice. One was we went to someone's house in Penticton, and it was like amazing. Like I absolutely loved it. This would have been I want to say pre-COVID. It was a while ago. And we didn't even talk about a book. It was
No.
just it was like a hang. And then the other was at my place on the Sunshine Coast. I was kind of like, whoever wants to come. And I think I had like 8 people show up, which is like kind of a lot for people taking out time out of their weekend to come and like stay with me at my beach house. And again, there was no book. It was just a very informal, like, let's go shoot the shit, like low expectations. I think your point about giving everybody a task or a job is really valid. It's one that I haven't really thought about because, again, I think my marketing background is make everything as easy for everyone as possible so that they will show up. Like, like people will always bring stuff. People will always bring food or booze or whatever it is. But I don't like, I'm just kind of like, oh, like they can also just show up and I'll handle everything for them. I do think it's nice. It's difficult to do because people's lives are like so chaotic. But I also want to go back to like what you were saying about being kind of an introvert extrovert, because I think that I am that way also. And I want people listening to also realize like we're not doing this because we want to all the time. It's not like, oh my God, I'm so stoked to have like 20 people at my house. And a lot of it feels forced to me because I feel like if I did not do this, I would do nothing. You know what I mean? Like I often have to force myself to do stuff, whether it is getting to know, like I have 3 daughters just like you. When my like last kid went to kindergarten this year, it's like, oh my God. And now I have to get to know a whole new set of parents. And I do find that to be like overwhelming sometimes. So it's not that I always want to host or be part of community. I often have to force myself. And the other piece that I think is so interesting is because with social media, and there's like so many influencers who are making these beautiful, like not just spreads, but like these beautiful tablescapes. And they have fairy lights in their garden and they have these beautiful like goodie bags. You know what I mean? Like they're all for the gram. And so everything looks so beautiful. And maybe to some extent, a lot of people look at that and think, oh my God, like that looks amazing, but it's so much work. So I can't do that. And then it kind of goes out of their mind. Whereas you could just do the most chill thing, like you said, the McMuffins and mimosas. I watched this TikTok yesterday where I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. It was this girl and she was saying like, you know what? People don't invite people over just for like cake and coffee anymore. She's like, I invite people over once a month and she gets like this Entenmann's like prepackaged cake.
Nice.
You know what I mean? And then she just cuts it up and they come for coffee and it's like very informal. You do not have to be spending a ton of money. You don't have to be making everything look perfect. Like people are generally happy to just be invited. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like they're happy to like show up. And I just want people to get over that fear and over that hump of feeling like everything needs to look a certain way because we are all coming up in this age of social media where everything does sort of look perfect, right? But it's like that's not real life. And I try my best when people come over to like make it presentable and it does look nice, but I outsource the charcuterie. I've never once made the charcuterie myself. I make my husband do it because he's really meticulous about cutting cheese. Like know your strengths. My strength is not that. My strength is not making stuff look beautiful. My strength is just gathering, and that's where the buck stops.
That's huge, though. That is so much. And what an honor to have been someone who you once were like, hey, you want to do this? Can I ask you 2 final questions? Mm-hmm. What are you reading? And what are you watching? Because you're such a pop culture aficionado.
Okay, so I'm currently reading Strangers. Which I came by, I think her name is Belle Burden.
Yeah.
And it's taking me, it's a very short book and it's taking me forever to get through it because it almost reads like a very personal diary and almost makes me feel like kind of uncomfortable. And so I have to take breaks in reading it. And the reason I often like to pick up books when I know they're going to be movies. Because I like the parallel. So Gwyneth Paltrow is now attached to play her, which is like the perfect person in this role. And it's also how I found our last book club book yesteryear, because I had followed the author Carol Claire Burke on like Substack and on Instagram. And then she hadn't even written the book, but she sold the idea for her book uh, to publishers and then also a movie deal prior to even writing it, just
It's
based on kind of the idea. That is rare. Yeah. I don't think that happens very often. But I was like, as soon as I knew it was going to be a book and Anne or a movie and Anne Hathaway was going to be in it, I was like, well, I need to like now read both. So yesteryear I recommend to everybody, and Strangers, I'm reading that right now. And then and also I'm reading this book called, what is it called? Soccerpedia. Oh my God. This could be a whole other podcast topic. As somebody who's very much non-athletic, I never did a sport growing up, and my kids are all like very athletic. And I didn't pay attention to their sports until this year
what?
because like my eldest kid was so miserable in her league.
Oh,
And like my husband Joe is like, just too busy to figure it out. So I put on like my thinking cap and I was like, oh, I have to learn how to help her. And so kids sports is insane, and the politics and the everything behind it has just been so fascinating. So I started reading this book, Soccerpedia, which is really interesting. But for shows, my favorite show this year has been one called Paradise. I think it's on Disney.
yeah.
And it has a bit of AI in there. It is so I don't want to spoil it for people, but I don't recommend shows lightly. And it is the best show that I've seen this year. There's 2 seasons. Is like each season is like 8 episodes long.
Hmm.
There's one more season to go, and then the show wraps up. But highly recommend. It is like you will whip through it. I love it. It's my favorite thing that I've watched. What
Oh,
about you?
crazy.
What are you reading
I
and watching?
Okay, so I have just started watching Widow's Bay, which is
Ooh,
absolutely terrifying me. I don't do well with this sort of thing,
okay.
but so many people recommended it to me. It's quite hilarious, and also for me as a wussy, quite terrifying.
Because I was
Um,
gonna say I also get scared, so I was gonna watch
yeah.
that based on all the recommendations. Is it actually scary or is it campy?
It is campy and scary. It
Okay.
is campy. It is so funny. The acting is so great. It's so interesting to see how it's shot because it is in like a northeastern coastal island town, which is so beautiful and so picturesque. And I live right by the ocean in Vancouver, and I feel it so protective. And like the ocean is just my favorite thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet they're able to make the whole thing so scary and so spooky. And oh man, I don't think I slept last night from it. But it's also just not like I think also the way that they use comedy as like just pure relief from the terror of it all is helpful. And it's not even violent yet. I'm only a couple episodes in. So it's funny, it's campy, it's fantastic, and I'm having a very hard time. I'm struggling through it. And then I right now am on a like horror thriller, why? I don't know. Campy kick. I'm reading lots of Riley Sager. I don't know if you've ever read him. Or Grady Hendrix. I'm reading right now the Final Girls support group, which I am quite liking. But I also, what else am I reading? Oh, Sinners for our book club,
Mhm.
even though I'm halfway through that. And there's a large part of that that's about cults. And so I have jokingly said for our next book club when we get together that even if you haven't read it, everyone should come prepared to talk about what sort of cult they would found if they were to found one. And for me, it would be 90s technology. That would be like our compound would only have access to like
Oh, agreed.
VHS tapes,
Sign me up.
Blockbuster. Like our main like house of worship would be a Blockbuster. And I feel like we'd have, yeah, cassette tapes. We'd have, I don't know, maybe some Walkman in there. It feels very much like that. That would be my cult.
Okay,
Um,
my dream is like analog. So
mm,
sign me up. I think I'm an early adopter of technology, but like begrudgingly, I don't want to. I want to go back to like my Instagram username is 80s child because I just, romanticize the pre-technology era so much. So I'll happily join your cult.
Fantastic. I'm so thrilled. Thank you, Mahsa. This was so fun and so wonderful. And I can't wait to hear who else has or will be starting a book club now that we have shown just how lazy you can be while still doing it all.
If you build it, they may sometimes come, right?
And that is the best we can all hope for.
Yeah.
Thanks, dude. Thank you, Mahsa. So after we stopped recording, we launched into a conversation that could have been an entire episode unto itself, all about parasocial relationships, which I find so fascinating. So we're actually going to connect again, record another episode because it was too good not to share. In the meantime, you can find Mahsa at Have You Heard About Podcast and on Instagram at Have You Heard Podcast and on Substack at We Need to Unpack This. And I, Kelsey Dundon, am on Substack at The Weighted. Thank you for listening.